everybody, John here. A coworker of mine is wanting to get into bass fishing, but he doesn't really know how to rig the baits and stuff like that. So that's the inspiration for this video here real quick. I'm going to go through some different rigging options, hook styles, and baits. Now keep in mind, during this video, everything is going to be oversized. Just that way it shows up better on camera. For instance, I'm using a 5/0 heavy wire EWG style hook for the Carolina rigging portion. And I'm using larger baits just that way they show up on camera. And we will be using yellow braid for the main line, and then leaders will be, I had some 12-pound tests left on an old reel, and hopefully that'll show up on camera. But this is just a brief overview of what baits we're going to be using and what jig heads, hooks, weights, things like that, and how to rig them to make a full rig. So we're going to dive right into it right now. We're going to start out with probably one of the best beginner techniques to learn how to bass fish with, and that's a simple Texas rig. So I'm going to jump into it of actually putting the weight, hook, bait, so forth. So we're going to get started here. Alright, so we've got our line here, and it's really simple to tie a Texas rig. We're going to take a weight of a bullet weight of some kind. This is a 3/8 ounce, God, I can't even remember the brand. I think it's a True Tungsten, I'm not real sure. But we're going to take that, we're going to slide the line in the pointed end of the bait, or I'm sorry, the pointed end of the weight. If I can get it through that little insert. There we go. Got it. Alright, so there's our weight. Typically most people will start out with a, oh, where'd my hook go? There it is. Just an offset round bend worm hook. Much like this one right here. This is a 5/0 just for, demonstration purposes only. Like I said, everything's going to be oversized in this video. But one of the best knots to tie, regardless of if you're using braid, monofilament, or fluorocarbon, is the San Diego jam knot. So we're going to go through the eye of our hook, have a little bit of line to work with. We're going to come over top of our finger with our tag end, as you see here. And we're going to wrap down the line towards the hook. Just a few wraps. Then the loop that you made with your finger is where you're going to put your tag end. It's going to go through there just like that. It's kind of hard to do to keep it in camera view. Cinch it down, wet it, and then pull it tight. Alright, then we're going to trim our tag end. Right like so. So, get a hold of the line here. There's our weight, and there's our hook. The weight is swinging freely. I'll touch more on that here in a few minutes, on to peg or not to peg. But now we're going to take our worm. This is just a Zoom Old Monster 10-inch worm. We're just using it for demonstration purposes. But on this particular worm, you have a ribbed side right here, and you have a flat side right there. You're going to take your hook and bring it in the center of the worm, the center of the head of the worm, come down 1/4 inch or so, and you're going to come out on the flat side, the non-ribbed side of the worm. And you're going to push it up over this bend of the hook right here. You can see it there. So right here is that first 90-degree turn. if I can get everything to cooperate here. You see that 90-degree bend right there behind the worm. Alright, now before you stick the hook point in, take the worm and lay it alongside the hook. That's going to give you a basic idea of where to put the hook in at. Let's see if I can get my hands to cover this. You can see right there where it lines up. So right there at the back of the hook is where we want our hook point to go in. And you're just going to slide it right like that to where the worm lays straight. The straighter the worm lays, the better. So hopefully you can see that. But the hook point is just under the surface. See if I can get it to pop out here where you can see it. You can see the hook starting to come out right there. That's how you rig a basic Texas rig. And you're going to have your weight on top of your worm right like that. It's one of the easiest ways, or one of the easiest rigs to learn how to fish with, learn how to bass fish with. Now I'm going to cut this loose and we're going to go into the other portion of it, because we're going to get into the flipping hooks here in a minute. But first up is the second easiest rig for you to learn how to bass fish with. Now I've already pre-tied this one up just to save time. Next one is a Carolina rig. And what a Carolina rig is you've got a weight that is tied to a swivel. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. So you got your weight on your line, and you've got a swivel, right like so. And then a leader tied to that, and then there's your hook. So we have our weight, our swivel, right there, and then a leader going down to our hook. Now this is an EWG style hook. I have found, for me personally, that the EWG style hooks work a lot better with when you're going to be setting the hook to the side and not straight up. I've got a couple videos up. You can go back and look. One of them is post-spawn transition, and you'll see where I'm using a Carolina rig. In that video I am using a EWG style hook. Now the bait that I'm going to use just for demonstration purposes is just going to be a Senko. This is a Gander Mountain brand Senko. But it's the same thing as rigging up that 10-inch worm on a round bend hook, except we're actually going to come all the way through the worm with our hook point. So for instance, we're actually going to bring the hook point all the way through the worm, right like so. But what we're going to do, we're going to lay the worm up there like that with the hook point. Then we're going to push the bait forward and just barely tuck that hook point on the inside of the worm. So if you can see it there, the hook point is down inside the worm. Now one thing that will help when you're trying to cast a Carolina rig, because that weight will want to run up the line, is put a bobber stop on it. So as you can see here, I've got a bobber stop just a couple of inches above my weight. And what that'll do, that'll stop that weight from sliding up the line when you go to cast. But there's still more than enough room that when a fish picks that up, you'll feel that line shoot back before the fish can feel the weight of the bait. Or, I'm sorry, the weight of the weight. But that is one way to do it. Leader lengths I use anywhere between 12 inches up to 36 inches, so about 3 feet. It just depends on my water clarity and the depth that I'm fishing, and also the baits that I'm using. But typically I'm running about an 18-inch leader. Oop, there goes the Ned Rig. Set this one here out of the way. Alright, now the next one that we're going to do is a Dropshot rig. Now what a Dropshot is, instead of the weight being above the hook, your weight is actually below the hook. So here's our weight, our hook, and then the line going up to our rod. Now I've actually snelled this. I have actually found that tying a snell knot, which I will show here in a moment when we do the flipping or punch setup, that the snell knot really makes that hook stand out. Now keep in mind that this is a very heavy hook. I oversized everything just where it will show up on camera. This is a 3/0 finesse flipping hook, but it does a pretty good job at getting that hook to stand up when you're using a normal drop shot hook. Okay, mosquito style hook, stuff like that. Alright, now the next rig I want to show you guys, and this one has caught so many fish. I mean, it is just an absolute smash lure, or sorry, technique, and that's wacky rigging. And all wacky rigging is, you take a Senko style bait, just a straight tail worm. You can even do it with tubes. I've seen a lot of guys do that. But see how I'm holding that bait in my hand? It will not stop moving. It's got a nice little quiver to it. Well, we're going to take our hook and come in right in the center of that weight, or sorry, right in the center of that bait, to where it hangs off of the hook, right like so. That's called wacky rigging, and this is a Gamakatsu Wicked Wacky hook. It's their weedless hook. It's got the 2 pieces of monofilament on there that act as a weed guard. This is a 3/0, like I keep saying. I've oversized everything just that way it shows up better on camera. But this is one of the best rigs for a new fisherman to go out and catch fish. You can drop shot it just like this. You can wacky rig it on a drop shot. Another way to also rig this is weightless Texas rig. So all it is just a Texas rig with no weight. But moving on. Now we're going to get into our big flipping punch setup here. So right here we got a 5/0. I'm sorry, this isn't a heavy wire. This is a one of the Mustad Denny Brower flipping hooks. They're okay. They're a little bit lighter than the heavy stuff, so they work okay. I'm not going to say they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. I prefer a heavy wire hook, but this is just what I grabbed out of the box. A lot of my stuff is out in the boat. Now, when we're doing a punch rig, we're going to be throwing into really heavy cover. We don't want that weight sliding away from our bait. So what we do is we take that bobber stop that we used on our Carolina rig. We're going to slide it onto our line, right like so. So right there's our bobber stop on our line. We're going to slide it up the line. We're going to take our weight. We're going to slide our weight onto our line. Point it in first. Give yourself plenty of slack to work with. Now when you're tying a snell knot, and I sometimes snell the knot or snell the hook, and sometimes I don't. I just tie a regular San Diego jam knot. It depends on how big of a weight that I'm fishing and if I'm missing any fish, where I feel them pick the bait up, set the hook, and the bait just comes flying out of their mouth. If that's happening a lot, then I'll snell the knot or snell the hook, and what that does is that actually, well, I'll show you here in a moment, but we're going to go in the top of our hook. So here's the hook point. We went in that side, the same side that our hook point's on. Give yourself plenty of slack to work with. Pinch the line along the back of the hook, and we're going to take our line with it being pinched in our finger and wrap just above the bait keeper, wrapping up towards the eye of the hook. Depending on the line diameter will determine how many times you need to wrap it. This I'm usually doing with heavy braid or 20-pound test fluorocarbon. So usually 5-6 wraps is about all that you're going to get with the fluorocarbon anyways. But we've made a loop down here, and that's where we're going to put our tag in. And we're going to pull our tag in down, keep everything pinched with your fingers, and start sliding it up. Until we cinch it down. Now the reason why the snell knot is great is watch what happens when I pull tight on this weight. Keep in mind the weight is going to be the first thing that contacts the fish's mouth. See how it pops that hook out there? Hook point up every time. When you pull tight on that line, the hook point will be facing up. It's going to get him. Sometimes, depending on the hook style, for instance these mustads, the hook point tends to kind of curve back in on itself. Sometimes you just got to take a pair of pliers and bend that out very slightly. I mean very slightly, just to bring that hook point more up, more level. And that'll really help with your hookup ratio too. But now when we're rigging a bait up, now this is a Berkeley Havoc Pit Boss, one of the best flipping baits that I've ever seen, in my opinion. But you'll notice that there's a little rough, a little section here where the plastic kind of dips into it a little bit. Zoom the camera in. See if it'll focus. Oop, if I can keep it in the camera here. But right there, it's kind of indented a little bit. That's where you want your hook point to come out. So, easy way to do it. That is for the new fisherman. Is just to lay our hook up here. And that'll help you determine the depth that you need to go into the worm with on your hook, to where your hook point will be right there. Usually it's right here where the ribs begin on the back of the Pit Boss. After you do this a few times, you'll get a good feel for it. Let me cut my tag end off here real quick, just to make everything look pretty. And then we're just going to come just inside our plastic. You can, if you push down with your finger, you'll be able to feel that hook point right there. And now we're going to push our bobber stop down to our weight and our bait. So now that weight is not moving, which is what you want when you're flipping heavy cover. You don't want that weight getting away from your bait. Snip that off. Oops. Alright, we got two more rigs that I want to discuss here. Oops. There goes my light. Alright, this is a Shaky Head jig. This was one that has a screw lock on it, and we're just going to use our Senko for demonstration purposes. So what we're going to do is take the head of our worm to the tip of this screw lock right here on the head. So we're just going to take our worm up to it and begin screwing it on there. Right, like so. And then we're going to take our hook, we're going to measure. So again, get it back in the camera view here. So we want our hook point to come in right here at the back of the hook. Or sorry, I can't talk right now. And we're just going to slide it down on there till you can just barely feel that hook point inside the worm. We want it to hang pretty straight though. It's okay if you got a little kink in the worm up here by the head. That'll actually help add some action as it's falling, it'll kind of make it twirl down to the bottom. Kind of like fishing a tube. For those of you that have done this a time or two, you'll know what I'm talking about, how a tube gets a really erratic action as it's falling. But another great bait to fish on a shaky head, because a lot of people get caught up on, you know, following the normal trends, and that's a rage crawl, Strike King rage crawl, and it's the same thing. Just till you feel that hook point just inside the skin. And down on the bottom, as you're dragging this is the football head style. So as you go to drag it, it's actually going to lift that head up and present that crawfish up like this in the water. He's actually going to be up here like this, which is a defensive posture of a crawfish. Drives bass nuts. In a nutshell, that's the basics of it. Let me pick up my worm package here real quick. So now we're going to talk about the Ned Rig, because this is a fish catching machine. So we have our shrooms head, and then we have our TRD. That's the easiest one to go with to learn how to do this. The TRD is kind of a do-nothing bait. I've got one pre-rigged right here. I'll move everything out of the way where you can see it better. And all it is just a simple jig head. Oops. Go the wrong way. And you just thread the worm, or the TRD, up onto the jig head, just like so. And that's the basic rigs that'll get you from, you know, January 1st to December 31st, as long as you have open water. And one little thing about this TRD, this Ned Rig, it can also be fished under the ice. I've caught quite a few fish doing that. So tight lines, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed. We'll catch you next time.